ceremony held to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Apollo 11 flight to the moon. On hand to give remarks for the occasion was President Bush, Vice President Quayle, and the crew of Apollo 11.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Admiral Richard Truly and the crew of Apollo 11. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and Mrs. Bush, accompanied by the Vice President of the United States and Mrs. Quayle.
Good morning. President Bush, Vice President Quayle, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Dedicating new stamps is one of a Postmaster General's more pleasant functions. In a simple and lasting fashion, stamps express our values. They salute our achievers and our achievements, who we are and what we strive to be. Like the artifacts under Mr. Adams' care, a postage stamp presents a unique picture, a snapshot, if you will, of a special time and place. It conveys complex ideas in a fraction of a second, all on a canvas barely 1 inch square. It's asking a great deal, even in the best of circumstances, to squeeze such sweeping events onto a tiny strip of perforated gum-backed paper. But when it happens, the result can be wonderful. 20 years ago, a predecessor of mine was presented with a difficult challenge to find a way of commemorating an event witnessed live by hundreds of millions of people. And we chose as our artist Paul Calley, a longtime member of the NASA Fine Art program. The result was the 1969 First Man on the Moon issue, perhaps the most recognizable postage stamp ever issued. A steel die, later used to manufacture millions of stamps, was carried on board Apollo 11, and a proof copy of the stamp was postmarked on the moon. We're gratified that the 1969 stamp helped so many Americans take part in the first lunar landing. That's why we decided to produce a second stamp to call attention to the 20th anniversary. This time, we chose Christopher Calley to design the stamp. Chris is Paul Calley's son. When you see his work, I think you will agree that talent, technique, and insight certainly run in the family. We printed 50 million moon landing stamps for sale at 40,000 post offices, large and small. That's 50 million tributes to a special American characteristic, our can-do attitude, our willingness, even our eagerness to meet any challenge and to prevail. I would now like to invite President Bush, Vice President Quayle, Admiral Truly, Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Collins, and Dr. Aldrin to assist me in unveiling the stamp.
Over here. Go unveil it.
Hello there. Hello there.
Good morning. I'm Richard Truly, Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Mr. President, so many distinguished guests, it's my enormous privilege to introduce to you three explorers whose names are known in every corner of this land and in every nation on this earth. They're all quad professionals. They're the stuff of legends. They're heroes of a civilization that cherishes courage and exploration and knowledge and peace. 20 years ago, they stood on the shoulders of thousands and thousands and thousands of other Americans, many of whom are here today, to show us that the spirit of man is limitless, that the pathway to the stars is open, and that this nation could lead the way. These three men from Apollo, in truth, showed us that we could be free of the earth to move of our own free will among the planets and the moons of our system. May I introduce them to you? It's their turn to speak, and I'm proud to listen. Commander of Apollo 11, Neil Armstrong, Lunar Module Pilot, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, Command Module Pilot, Mike Collins.
Thank you, Admiral Truly, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. Postmaster General, ladies and gentlemen, friends. A generation ago, about 1/3 Americans from sea to shining sea were given an uncommon opportunity to participate in the attempt to expand the human experience to the moon. The Apollo program enjoyed a certain nobility of purpose. A program not to conquer enemies, but to conquer ignorance. A program not to exploit, but to explore. A program not to take from others, but to give to all. To give new knowledge, to enlarge the human horizon. This week, many of those who were involved in that effort gather here and elsewhere across the land to remember and reflect. They remember the immense difficulties they faced. They remember that some paid the ultimate sacrifice in order that others could proceed. They remember the eventual successes that were honestly earned and gratefully achieved. The men and women of Apollo were and remain most appreciative to the nation for giving them the opportunity to prove themselves and to the rest of the world that we would not surrender leadership, we would not accept being second best. Mr. President, that spirit, the spirit of Apollo, remains today. Now, introduce first Mike Collins, CMP.
President and Mrs. Bush, Vice President Mrs. Quayle, ladies and gentlemen. 20 years ago, I was privileged, among other things, to address a joint session of Congress. Here's what I said in part. Many years before there was a space program, my father had a favorite quotation, and incidentally is carved on the side of Union Station here in Washington. He who would bring back the wealth of the Indies must carry the wealth of the Indies with him. This we have done. We have taken to the moon the wealth of this nation, the vision of its political leaders, the intelligence of its scientists, the dedication of its engineers, the careful craftsmanship of its workers, and the enthusiastic support of its people. We have brought back rocks. And I think that's a fair trade, for just as the Rosetta Stone revealed the language of ancient Egypt, so may these rocks unlock the mystery of the origin of the moon, and indeed of our Earth and even the solar system. During the flight of Apollo 11, in the constant sunlight between the Earth and the moon, it was necessary for us to control the temperature of our spacecraft by a slow rotation, not unlike that of a chicken on a barbecue spit. As we turned, the Earth and the moon alternately appeared in our windows. We had our choice. We could look toward the moon, toward Mars, toward our future in space, toward the new Indies, or we could look back toward the Earth, our home with the problems spawned over more than a millennium of human occupancy. We looked both ways. We saw both, and I think that is what our nation must do. We can ignore neither the wealth of the Indies nor the realities of the immediate needs of our cities, our citizens, our civics. We cannot launch our planetary probes from a springboard of poverty, discrimination, or unrest. But neither can we wait until each and every terrestrial problem has been solved. Such logic 200 years ago would have prevented expansion westward beyond the Appalachian Mountains, for assuredly the eastern seaboard was beset by problems of great urgency then, as it is today. People have always gone where they have been able to go. It's that simple. We will continue pushing back our frontier, no matter how far it may carry us from our homeland. 20 years later, I would just like to add one postscript. We have rested on our Apollo laurels long enough. It's time to get moving again.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, supporters of man in space, in 1961, President John F. Kennedy justified his challenge to America to land men on the moon by saying, "We choose to go to the moon and to do other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard." 8 years later, we of Apollo 11, with a team of thousands behind us and the support of millions, had the honor to carry out the dream of centuries and to extend the pioneering American spirit. We are at a critical time to revitalize our manned space flight program. If flights to Mars and to the moon again are in our future, then I believe the Space Station Freedom Complex should more adequately reflect the evolutionary needs of such a vision. I believe the permanent living quarters should be at a spaceport that becomes primarily a transportation hub, a busy service, maintenance, and refueling port that supports nearby international laboratories with their delicate scientific and industrial research. Artificial gravity research in space is essential to make wise choices as to how to plan for long-duration manned missions such as to Mars. I believe that my experience and dedicated interest in the last several years has suggested reasonable concepts to give us an early international space laboratory capability, artificial gravity research, and a growing spaceport operations that can economically support manned missions returning to the moon and outward to Mars. And I want to help as a senior advisor to your National Space Council, Mr. Vice President, and continue advising NASA exploration offices. The time for seizing the initiative in space is upon us. President Kennedy's challenge over 28 years ago was a starting pistol for our pioneering giant leap for mankind. Perhaps we are at the starting line, prepared for take your marks. Now is the time to gather an educated American consensus for our future in space. Perhaps the 30th anniversary of President Kennedy's challenge would be an appropriate decision date for a strategic planetary initiative. Then in 1992, the quinticentennial of Columbus's epic voyage, the world will know how we will again have men from Earth venturing outward. Thank you.
Mr. President, distinguished guests, it gives me great pleasure to present to you the Vice President of the United States, Chairman of the National Space Council, and a Regent of the Smithsonian Institution, Dan Quayle. Mr. Vice President.
Thank you very much, Bob, Mr. President, Mrs. Bush, Dick Truly, and fellow astronauts, and ladies and gentlemen. We are here today to commemorate an historic event, July 20th, 1969. But we are also here to rededicate our resources, to rededicate our energies to the future and to future generations of Americans. July 20th, 1969 reminds us of this, that when Americans have set their minds to accomplish something, we always exceed our expectations. July 20th, 1969 is a milestone for America and mankind. And it is also an inspiration for us and for the future as we push forward on America's frontier, space exploration. Today we salute not only the courageous astronauts, but the dedicated men and women of NASA who made their voyages possible and who will continue to ensure that America remains number one in space. But, ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce to you the man who in 6 short months has established himself as the premier leader in the world, a man who has his eye fixed on the future, your friend, our President, President George Bush.
Thank you all very, very much. And thank you, Mr. Vice President, for your introduction and for undertaking to head that National Space Council and for demonstrating your skillful leadership there. And thanks to all of you who've braved the weather to join us today. Behind me stands one of the most visited places on Earth, a symbol of American courage and ingenuity. And before me stand those on whose shoulders this legacy was built, the men and women of the United States Astronaut Corps. And we are very proud to be part of this unprecedented gathering of America's space veterans and to share this stage with 3 of the greatest heroes of this or any other century, the crew of Apollo 11. It's hard to believe that 20 years have passed. Neil and Buzz, who originated the moonwalk 15 years before Michael Jackson ever even thought of it. And Michael Collins, former director of this amazing museum and the brave pilot who flew alone on the dark side of the moon while Neil and Buzz touched down. Mike, you must be the only American over age 10 that night who didn't get to see the moon landing. And later this evening, after the crowd disperses and the sun goes down, a nearly full moon will rise out of the darkness and shine down on America that is prosperous and at peace. And for those old enough to remember that historic night 20 years ago, step outside tonight with your children or your grandchildren, lift your eyes skyward and tell them of the flag, the American flag that still flies proudly in the ancient lunar soil. And for those who were not yet born or then too young to recall, you who are the children of the new century, raise your eyes to the heavens and join us in a great dream, an American dream, a dream without end. Project Apollo, the first men on the moon,
Some called it quixotic, impossible. It had never been done. But America dreamed it, and America did it, and it began on July 16th, 1969. The sun rose a second time that morning as the awesome fireball of the Saturn V lifted these three pioneers beyond the clouds. A crowd of 1 million, including half of the United States Congress, held its breath as the earth shook beneath their feet, and our view of the heavens was changed forevermore. 3 days and 3 nights they journeyed. It was a perilous, unprecedented, breathtaking voyage, and each of us remember the night. Barbara and our daughter Dorothy were with me in our red brick house right here on the outskirts of Washington, where we moved up here to represent Houston in the United States Congress. Our 12-year-old kid, Marvin, was on a trip out west with family friends. Remember stopping at a roadside motel to watch. Second boy, Jeb, 16 that summer, teaching English and listening by radio in a small Mexican village where electricity had yet to arrive. The landing itself was harrowing. Alarms flashed, and a computer overload threatened to halt the mission while Eagle dangled thousands of feet above the moon. Armstrong seized manual control to avoid a huge crater strewn with boulders, with new alarms signaling a loss of fuel and the view now blocked by lunar dust. Mission control began the countdown for a mandatory abort. America, indeed the whole world, listened, the lump in our throat and a prayer on our lips. And only 20 seconds of fuel remained, and then out of the static came the words, "Houston Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." Within one lifetime, the human race had traveled from the dunes of Kitty Hawk to the dust of another world. Apollo is a monument to our nation's unparalleled ability to respond swiftly and successfully to a clearly stated challenge, and to America's willingness to take great risks for great rewards. We had a challenge, we set a goal, and we achieved it. So today is not only an occasion to thank these astronauts and their colleagues, the thousands of talented men and women across the country whose commitment, creativity, and courage brought this dream to life. It's also a time to thank the American people for their faith, because Apollo's success was made possible by the drive and daring of an entire nation committed to a dream. In the building behind me are the testaments to Apollo and to what came before. Chariots of fire flown by Armstrong, Yeager, Lindbergh, and the Wrights, and in the National Archives across the great expanse of grass are preserved the founding documents of the idea that made it all possible, the world's greatest experiment in freedom and diversity. And here, standing between these twin legacies, is a fitting place to look forward to the future, because the Apollo astronauts left more than flags and footprints on the moon. They also left some unfinished business. For even 20 years ago, we recognized that America's ultimate goal was not simply to go there and go back, but to go there and go on. Mike Collins said it best: the moon is not a destination, it's a direction. And space is the inescapable challenge to all the advanced nations of the earth. And there's little question that in the 21st century, humans will again leave their home planet for voyages of discovery and exploration. What was once improbable is now inevitable. The time has come to look beyond brief encounters. We must commit ourselves anew to a sustained program of manned exploration of the solar system, and yes, the permanent settlement of space. We must commit ourselves to a future where Americans and citizens of all nations will live and work in space. And today, yes, we are. The U.S. is the richest nation on earth with the most powerful economy in the world. And our goal is nothing less than to establish the United States as the preeminent spacefaring nation. From the voyages of Columbus to the Oregon Trail to the journey to the moon itself, history proves that we have never lost by pressing the limits of our frontiers. Indeed, earlier this month, one news magazine reported that Apollo paid down-to-earth dividends, declaring that man's conquest of the moon would have been a bargain at twice the price. And they called Apollo the best return on investment since Leonardo da Vinci brought himself a sketch pad. In 1961, it took a crisis, the space race, to speed things up. Today, we don't have a crisis. We have an opportunity. To seize this opportunity, I'm not proposing a 10-year plan like Apollo. I'm proposing a long-range, continuing commitment. First, for the coming decade, for the 1990s, space station freedom, our critical next step in all our space endeavors, and next, for the new century, back to the moon, back to the future, and this time, back to stay. And then a journey into tomorrow, a journey to another planet, a manned mission to Mars. Each mission should and will lay the groundwork for the next. And the pathway to the stars begins as it did 20 years ago with you, the American people, and it continues just up the street there to the United States Congress, where the future of the space station and our future as a space-faring nation will be decided. And yes, we're at a crossroads. Hard decisions must be made now as we prepare to enter the next century. As William Jennings Bryan said just before the last turn of the century, destiny is not a matter of chance. It is a matter of choice. It is not a thing to be waited for. It is a thing to be achieved. And to those who may shirk from the challenges ahead or who doubt our chances of success, let me say this. To this day, the only footprints on the moon are American footprints. The only flag on the moon is an American flag, and the know-how that accomplished these feats is American know-how. What Americans dream, Americans can do. And 10 years from now, on the 30th anniversary of this extraordinary and astonishing flight, the way to honor the Apollo astronauts is not by calling them back to Washington for another round of tributes. It is to have space station freedom up there, operational and underway, a new bridge between the worlds, and an investment in the growth, prosperity, and technological superiority of our nation. And the space station will also serve as a stepping stone to the most important planet in the solar system, planet Earth. As I said in Europe just a few days ago, environmental destruction knows no borders. A major national and international initiative is needed to seek new solutions for ozone depletion and global warming and acid rain. And this initiative, Mission to Planet Earth, is a critical part of our space program. And it reminds us of what the astronauts remember as the most stirring sight of all. It wasn't the moon or the stars, as I remember. It was the Earth, tiny, fragile, precious, blue orb rising above the arid desert of Tranquility Base. The space station is a first and necessary step for sustained manned exploration, one that we're pleased has been endorsed by Senator Glenn and Neil Armstrong and so many of the veteran astronauts we honor today. But it's only a first step. And today I'm asking my right-hand man, our able Vice President Dan Quayle, to lead the National Space Council in determining specifically what's needed for the next round of exploration, the necessary money, manpower, and material, the feasibility of international cooperation, and develop realistic timetables, milestones along the way. The Space Council will report back to me as soon as possible with concrete recommendations to chart a new and continuing course to the Moon and Mars and beyond. There are many reasons to explore the universe, but 10 very special reasons why America must never stop seeking distant frontiers. The 10 courageous astronauts who made the ultimate sacrifice to further the cause of space exploration. They have taken their place in the heavens so that America can take its place in the stars. Like them and like Columbus, we dream of distant shores we've not yet seen. Why the Moon? Why Mars? Because it is humanity's destiny to strive, to seek, to find, and because it is America's destiny to lead. 6 years ago, Pioneer 10 sailed beyond the orbits of Neptune and of Pluto, the first man-made object to leave the solar system, its destination unknown. It's now journeyed through the tenures of 5 presidents, 4 billion miles from Earth. In the decades ahead, we will follow the path of Pioneer 10. We will travel to neighboring stars, to new worlds, to discover the unknown. And it will not happen in my lifetime and probably not during the lives of my children, but a dream to be realized by future generations must begin with this generation. We cannot take the next giant leap for mankind tomorrow unless we take a single step today. To all of you here, our able director of NASA and others who've served so well, to all of you here, and especially the astronauts, we wish you good luck in your quests, wherever that may take you. Godspeed to you, one and all, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you all very, very much. And now we're going to sign this proclamation declaring Space Exploration Day on this historic anniversary. Very much. Thank you. Good to be with you. Get your head up.